seeing anything at my end. Are we on?
There he is.
Oh, this is.
You there, mate?
Can you hear me there?
Great
No, okay.
start.
I can't actually see anything. Oh, it just says it failed to play the video.
God.
All right, we'll just ignore that and we'll play on. But
Great start.
I'm looking at a black
Good start
screen,
to
but
the night.
hopefully people out there can getting a better video experience than me. But it is Al Paton here with Matt Forrest for the Round 15 live SuperCoach AFL teams show. We've got the teams are in. There are some interesting ones from a SuperCoach point of view in terms of the ins and outs. So we'll get through all of those very shortly. We've got, of course, good game coming up tonight over in Perth, Freo and Essendon. But so it's an 8-10 start, I think, isn't it? So the subs will be a little bit later for that one. We might get them just at the end of the show. We'll see how we go. But Matty, how are you going coming into the second last weekend of the buys? I know from a SuperCoach point of view, you're a bit more old school. Just trying not to use up all the trades too early, but I've sort of had this theory that I'll try and do that, but it's just not happening, unfortunately. So I'm going to be potentially using 4 this weekend somehow.
We've gone opposite, haven't we? I'm at the moment have done 0. I thought coming into the weekend that I'd be using a couple and shipping off Clayton Oliver, but I'm holding fat. There isn't really anyone that's on my sort of immediate radar to bring in. I was tempted by Bont. I'm going to hold firm. Hopefully that he doesn't, I'm hoping Camden McIntosh goes to him and gives him a little tag. Not that that would stop him. Bont's too good for him, but maybe it'd reduce 150 down to 120, hopefully. But yeah, I've just gotten to a point where I'm like, I don't think I'll make any moves. I contemplated bringing in Sam Butler a week early, save myself having to do it next week. But yeah, I've got 9 trades left, and I've got 25 playing this week, so I'm pretty happy. A lot of green dots.
Yeah, well, that's good. I think I've lost 1 tonight. We may as well quickly look at the teams for the Thursday night game, which is Essendon and Freo, and there are some interesting changes there. I thought, we've taken them off the story by the look of it, so we won't worry about that. But the main one for me, Archer Day Wicks dropped from the Bombers, so there's the 20 points that I won't be able to count in my score. He's been sort of the 21st, 22nd player the last couple of weeks through the buys. Haven't actually needed him at all, but you always like to have as many green dots as possible. But he's out. The good news from the Bombers is they're sort of popular rookies. Angus Clark, Zach Johnson, they're all in and on the field. So hopefully they'll score all right again and keep making money for us. And the big one at Freo is that Sam Darcy's been rested. So that means Luke Jackson is rucking solo against Essendon's, I think, their 11th debutant of the season in Vigo Vizentini. So, we'll get to captains later on, but if you had Luke Jackson in your team, and I know some people, including our man Dossie, Hayden Kenny from the Fandom's Lair, has redrawn his trade plans to actually bring Luke Jackson in. I'm pretty much on the basis of this one matchup. It's always risky, I think. Matchups on paper don't always work out the way you think they're going to go, but it does look like a chance for Luke Jackson to go absolutely massive.
Yeah, I've had him all year, Jackson, and he's been great. So he's delivered some captaincy-worthy scores. I'll vice captain him tonight, which is great. But he's had 165 against West Coast, who I think at the time it was Bailey Williams rucking from memory in round 3. He came up against Kieran Briggs and scored 143, as well as Dante Vizentini, so Vigo's brother, and he's got 163 then. So he's got when he goes big, he goes very big. He's obviously got the ability to follow the ball up at ground level, go forward, kick goals, and just he's a very athletic sort of player. So having him against the first game, I really like Vigo. He's a real battler in the VFL. His numbers have been great this year, and he deserves his chance at the AFL level, but he came up against Carlton's Mark Pitnet a couple of weekends ago, and it was the first time he'd come up against a really mature body in the VFL, and he got it handed to him. He definitely lost that contest there. So fingers crossed he isn't, he puts up a bit of a fight, but I'm expecting a big Luke Jackson performance tonight.
Yeah, no, I think that's a pretty fair assessment. If we go, so the game that we do have up on the screen, Geelong and Brisbane, is the Friday night game. Great contest coming up down at the Cattery. Brisbane lost their last 2, so they were just wobbling a tiny bit, and the Cats are going pretty well. So I think they'd start favourites down there. And just the one change, Sam De Koning out injured. As we know, Ollie Henry is back for the Cats, and Brisbane have lost Jack Payne to that horrible knee injury. Callum Archie's out with illness, and Darcy Gardner and Will McLaughlin come in. So no massive changes there that are going to affect us too much in Supercoach. I mean, to me, it's just the really the midfield battle. It's going to be so interesting when you've got your Lockie Neal, McCluggage is having a brilliant year, Will Ashcroft, Dunkley against, what matchups do you, does Oisin Mullen go to a Neal or someone like that? And then, of course, you've got Max Holmes, who's just absolutely killing it, and Bailey Smith, if they get a bit of attention coming the other way.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Jared Berry has been that sort of run with player in the past. He hasn't done it as much this year. They've sort of just let their midfield trio of Neil, Dunkley, and Ashcroft, or the Ashcrofts, I guess, and as well as a few others that roll through there, just to take them one-on-one. So that, I think, going the other way, it'll be interesting to see. Like, if they tag, it would be a surprise to me. It could be just a Dunkley, a bit of a defensive sort of, just be mindful. But in saying that, Dunkley doesn't really match up that well on the sort of the line breaking pace of Holmes or Smith. So that, I think, a little bit different. But I think Shane Mullen would probably go to, either a Zorko down at half back or Neil. So they're probably the two that the obvious ones. I don't think he might go to McCluggage. His running capacity is pretty good as well, and McCluggage has been seriously damaging. So there's a chance there, but you could go a number of different ways for a potential tag. And if one doesn't get him, the other one, it's similar to Collingwood with the Dacosses. It's there's so much firepower in there.
Yep. The name that you've already mentioned on this podcast of great interest to super coaches. He's not in many teams, but Mark Pitnet is in for might be second game of the year, is it? I think, but maybe the first time he's playing alongside Tom De Koning. So Tom De Koning named in the ruck. Pitnet comes in, named on the bench with all these injuries at Carlton. Charlie Curnow has been named after being in doubt with that. He subbed out last week with a calf issue, but Hudson O'Keefe is out injured. So replacing a tall with a tall, I guess. So I'd be interested on your thoughts on what that means for Tom De Koning, who's in plenty of teams, and they are going to double team Tristan Cherry, I guess, which is not the worst idea, given how he's been going this year. North, just the one change. Charlie Comben comes back, and Callan Dawson is out. But Pitnet is the big one there when it comes to Supercoach.
Yeah, he is. It certainly affects De Koning. Pitnet, obviously, in his previous season, has been really only one pace in terms of ruck with little forward craft. In the preseason, he was working more as a forward in hopes to play alongside De Koning, but a calf injury, and I think the final preseason game sort of ruled him out for the first 6 weeks, and that put him on the sidelines while De Koning started in that first month and a half. And he's only played one game this year, and that was when De Koning was missing with that injured larynx. Right. So it's the first time they'll play together. In the past, De Koning has usually gone forward and played deeper as a forward, usually alongside Curnow and Mackay, and then Pitnet has taken the main ruck duties. I'd imagine that De Koning is going to be playing sort of more ruck with Pitnet more forward, but it'll be interesting to see how that sort of mix works, whether it's falling back to the what it was last year with Pitnet mainly rucking and De Koning mainly forward. I don't think so. I'm surprised that Harry Lemmy didn't earn a spot on the emergency bench. He hasn't debuted yet, but with Curnow under an injury cloud, I know he's been named, but I would have thought Lemmy would have, got a mention there. He's been in pretty good form in the VFL. So it sort of signs point to Curnow playing, I'd say, if they're pretty confident to name him without sort of a backup option. I know that Young has played as a bit of a forward this year, but I'd hate to go into a game with Young and Pitnet as your key forwards.
Interesting. So I know a few people brought in TDK last weekend. Obviously, it was fantastic against West Coast, and even thinking of doing it this week. This big Max Gawn short move that you could sort of trade him down and to try and find some money to fix your team somewhere else. But red flags, which we were talking about at the start of the year, and it hasn't really been an issue all season. But this is what happens in Supercoach. Round 15, it finally comes back to bite us. Now on a Saturday afternoon, Port Adelaide, Sydney over at Adelaide Oval. A couple of changes here for Port. They lose Aaliyah to injury. Ollie Wines is out, and they've dropped Hugh Jackson. A bit of a revolving door with some of the young guys over at Port this year. Made it a bit tricky for Supercoach. Well, there's another one who's back. Christian Moraes was dropped last week. He's back. What's Barry's first name again? They have draft pick. He's that's right.
Joe Barry.
I nearly called him Jared. So Joe Barry's back in after he hasn't been seen for a while, but another chance for him, and Lockie Jones back after he's missed a few with a hamstring injury. And I guess the big news there from a Supercoach point of view is that Jason Horne-Francis has been named. He was a fitness test this week after hurting his shoulder last week, so named in the side. So that's very positive and named in the centre square. And for the Swans, some really interesting changes here too. Matty Roberts is back, missed a game with illness, and then obviously they had the bye, but he's got traded out of a few Supercoach teams, but he's back in. Now, Errol Goulden is back, so there's a great Supercoach name. Obviously not going to be in many teams. One we can watch. It's going to be hard for anyone to bring him in. He'd be an amazing pod if you can get him for the run home, but it will be interesting to see what he does to the flow and effect to the rest of the team with Mills and Chad Warner and these guys where they line up. Tom Papley's back. So some pretty decent ins there for the Swans and Joel Amadi as well. And so out goes, so talking about the flow and effects of all this. So Jake Lloyd is out, and I think this is the first time he's been dropped in 10 years. So obviously been a mainstay of the Sydney side. Taylor Adams is out injured. Hanley's out. He's been dropped. And Corey Warner has also been dropped. But Riley Bice keeps his spot. He's in the last spot on the bench. Angus Sheldrick is on the bench. So he's another one who could be affected with a few names coming in and things moving around. But Callum Mills is the one here. He's been named on a wing, which is interesting. You're obviously not trading him in this week unless you got him last week. Obviously, you're going to pass on him, even though this is his bubble game and he's only 357K. Were you tempted at all?
Not really, to be honest. I think I just don't know where my backline is completely set and has been for a few weeks, and even then I still look at with envy at Bailey Dale and the fact that I don't have him. So he wouldn't be slotting into my backline, so it'd be a flex play. And then I'm hoping to get someone like Bontempelli in and hopefully take up a flex position there. So I just don't know where he'd play. He might end up as a D7 if I were to bring him in, but or potentially downgrading Clayton Oliver to him was the other move, net me 100 grand. But I still think that Oliver will average more from here on out than Mills. So the trade didn't make sense for me. I'm not that strapped for cash where I need to bring in someone who I think will only average about 80 or so. But he seems to be a pretty popular move. So maybe I'm not paying attention enough to it, or could be just a little pod move by not getting him in.
Yeah, I mean, he's had 2 games. The first game he scored 70 or so and looked pretty good, but 70 in his first game back, and then he scored a ton. But that was against Richmond, and there was Richmond was non-competitive after quarter time in that game, so it's hard to read too much into that. And Roberts wasn't playing, and obviously Goulden wasn't there. So I'm getting in, but to me it is a bit of that cash thing where I need the money and I can get 90 grand by trading Roberts down to him. And to be honest, they're probably going to score fairly similar. But that 90K can really help me out. And I mean, there's a world which Mills averaged 116 about 3 or 4 years ago, but it really depends, where he plays. If he's playing as a full-time midfielder, that's obviously a different story to if he's on a wing, which is not ideal, or a halfback's not too bad. But sometimes he gets, he's the captain, so sometimes he'll take a job and go and shut someone down. So it's a bit of a roll of the dice. But I think at that price, it's worth taking. But I can understand why you might not want to go there. Now the big Saturday night game is Collingwood and St Kilda. One change at the Pies: William Hayes goes out, Pat Lipinski comes in. I mean, weird team Collingwood that they're just about the best team in the comp, and there's not a lot of players in there that you'd pick in Supercoach. Obviously, Nick Dacos is very popular, but he's had an interesting year. And for the Saints, so they have made some changes as we thought they might. We had Drew Jones on the Breaking Even podcast yesterday, and he told us that Alex Taru he thought would come in, and that has happened. So he'll make his debut, one of their top 10 draft picks last year. The Flying Viking took 8 intercept marks in the VFL last week. That's sort of the way he plays. High impact sort of player. So I think he's about 160 grand in Supercoach. So we can watch him for a couple of weeks. Probably not someone we're going to be looking to bring in. I don't know too many people will be bringing in a rookie in a couple of weeks at that price, but definitely keen to see how he goes. Mateus Philippou is back. He's had some weird injury issues, so anyone who's held on to him, he's at least another green dot. Or if you need a super cheap forward, we'll see how he goes, and if he can stay fit for a few weeks and put up some okay numbers, he might be an option. And Darcy Wilson's back after being dropped for a couple of weeks to the VFL. So picking a few of these kids, which is I think makes a lot of sense. Where the Saints really have to go and outgo Zach Jones, who's not sure if he's really part of the future down there. Jack Carroll, who's been sub a couple of times, and Ryan Burns, who is just another sort of fringe player, I guess. But you can sort of see the direction the Saints are probably heading in, which makes sense at this time of year.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see Philippou and Wilson get some midfield minutes, sort of in that centre square bounce. Obviously, that is, as you said, that's the future that they're aiming towards. You want to be giving these guys, a bit of an extended run. Same with Travaglia. It'd be good to see him, a little bit more exposed to that midfield rather than playing out on a wing. I'd imagine, I know it's been the sort of talk of the town, Wintag probably gets a tagging role again. And, he was good last week, but it doesn't really amount to much. So, I just think that it'd be silly to play him as a shutdown role, and you haven't really explored his, his attacking side of the game. And if they're, looking towards the future, maybe they make a call on that. But I guess we'll see where he lines up on the weekend.
Yeah, it's an interesting point actually, because maybe we can do that. He's got that in his arsenal, obviously. But yeah, I know that a few people probably watching through the SuperCoach classes because they were annoyed about Marcus Bontempelli not scoring very well, but sort of asking, what do you gain from that when you lose by 10 goals anyway? And yeah, what the direction of the club is, putting a hard tag on. But we don't question Ross, how he likes to do things. But yeah, that's an interesting one. So, but yeah, I think I certainly wouldn't be putting the captain on Dacos, just thinking that is a definite chance that he'll get that job. Now, we're into the Sunday games, I think now. Giants are playing Gold Coast. So what have we got here? They've brought in a few changes here. So they've lost Brent Daniels to another injury, and Sam Taylor's out injured as well. So a couple of decent outs there. But Toby Green is back. Jake Stringer's back. Ryan Angwin, Jacob Ware, and James Leake has been named. Now he's in the last spot on the extended interchange. So we don't want to get too excited. But he was a popular rookie earlier in the year. I think he's technically still on the bubble. Actually, he played maybe
still on the bubble.
Two rounds and it hasn't been seen since. So if anyone's hanging on to him, he could be another player to come in this week. Harry Rouston's another interesting one. He's on the extended bench as well. He's on the bubble. Played really well last week. He was their second top CBA midfielder behind Finn Callahan, and did a bit of a run with role on Lachie Neale and looked really good. So I expect he will stay in the team and is a potential option if you want to downgrade in the midfield. And over to the Suns, they've made a few changes as well. David Swallow goes out. Sean Lemons goes out. They both dropped. And on the ins, and again, mostly extended interchange stuff here. Lockie Weller, Alex Davies, who barely seen this year. I'm not sure what has he been injured or something? Because I always thought he was a good prospect. Ethan Reid, Connor Butterick, and Jai Farrow also gets another crack potentially.
Yeah, Davies has been a sort of an interesting story for the Suns. I know that he was almost out of the club at the end of last year from memory, or maybe it was the year before, but sort of stuck fat and hasn't really shown anything this year. He's been sort of out in the VFL, sort of out in the sticks, I guess. Playing pretty good football when he's there, and hopefully he gets a game at some point. But I'd imagine he's just, with all these academy players coming through that are a bit younger. Obviously have the ties as well to the Giants, to the Suns, and are in contract. They're probably just going, well, he's not part of our future. I guess maybe they'll try and get a little pick for him and use the points to match on the next flurry of academy players that are coming through the system. So hopefully he gets a go. It's good to see looking at the Giants team, those younger guys get named as well. I don't know if any of them make it in the side in terms of Angwin, Ware, or Leake, but it'd be nice to get a little bit of rookie price players back in the side. Joe Fonte was one that we largely missed. He's been in the side almost entirely since he came in halfway through the year, and
he would have actually been a pretty decent pick.
No one spoke about him, and he's been scoring 50s and 60s and playing every week. We just missed him.
His first game I think was good, and then his second one he dropped a 20 or something, and so everyone just ignored him. But he stayed in the team and actually been pretty decent. Yes, it happens. Yeah. And we've had plenty of misses of the ones that we have picked. So there's a few that have slipped through as well, annoyingly. And the last game, so sort of slightly unusual, I guess, scheduling on the Sunday that the two games is a 1 o'clock game or a 1:10 and then a 3:20 game. No late game this weekend. The Bulldogs are playing in Richmond, so plenty of interest here, SuperCoach-wise. I know when we talk captains, I think this game will be in the discussion for certain. Luke Cleary got dropped by the Dogs, and a few ins again, potentially mostly on the extended bench. Nick Caulfield, there's a SuperCoach name from a while back. Jed Buslinger potentially gets another game. That might nearly be his bubble game too if he gets in. James Harms is back in now. I've never heard of this guy. Who's this? Jux on the extended bench for the Dogs.
It would be a debutant if he gets named. He's drafted as a little sort of speedy halfback flanker, out of Geelong Falcons. Trialled played in the preseason as a small forward. I think he had one game where he kicked 4 goals in, and either it was intra-club or one of the first preseason games of the year. And so I just thought, oh, here we go, Bevo salad coming up again for poor Lockie. But he settled back in the half-back line and has been pretty good for Footscray this year. So, yeah, the fact that he's been named in the extended squad is always a good sign that he might get a late little chance at a bit of AFL football and just ruin him for next year. So
yeah, exactly.
It gets to the point of the year where you start hoping that guys don't debut and keep their price down for next season. But
I know there's we'll get to the Tigers. I know there's a bit of excitement at Richmond, certainly in the fans, about Taj Houghton is making his debut, I guess, in the VFL this week. He's picked up, I think he was about pick 11 in the draft and did his ACL sort of midway through last year. And he's finally one of those ACL guys who's ready to come back, and he's going to start playing, maybe get a half in the VFL this week, so he could potentially debut, in 3 or 4 weeks' time. And I'm half thinking, wouldn't that be better to just maybe, just take it easy with him and let's, have him next year for round 1 at 120K in SuperCoach rather than whatever his price now when he's not a whole lot of use to us. But anyway, that's just purely thinking from a SuperCoach point of view. Good news for him, obviously, and Richmond's got some players coming back from injury finally. I think Sam Lawler and Josh Smiley only a couple of weeks away, and even Josh Kipkis might get some games, at least in the VFL, in the next sort of month or so. So some good news there on the injury front for the Tigers. But in terms of this game, the big one is Kane McCall if he's out injured. So I missed that. I'm not sure what's wrong with him, but that'll hurt a few people in SuperCoach. And the ins, again, mostly extended bench. Some good names here, though. Jacob Blight, James Trezise, Jasper Alga, that'll be his debut if he gets in. He's a small forward. And McKelty Lafau is named. Talk about ACL victims from last year. He's played 2 or 3 games, I think, in the VFL, kicked a few goals. And obviously the Tigers forward line needs a bit of help. So, again, extended bench. But, great to see his name appearing again on the team sheets after he was just about the shining light for Richmond last year in a pretty dark year.
Yeah, it's great to see him sort of named. Jasper Algo, another one of those rookies that could be ruined in terms of a price point for next year. I know he's a small forward, so you can't expect a whole heap, but his pressure's been really good in the VFL, and he was close, about a month, 2 months ago. Then his form dipped off a little bit, but now he's back and he's playing well. So good to see him rewarded with another extended bench. Naming, as you mentioned before, Smiley's another chance to potentially debut in the latter half of the year. He's starting to string some VFL form together as well. So another couple of guys who are going to get ruined by price rises for next year. But Lafau, great to see him sort of back playing footy. He, as you said, that sort of mid-season. Was he an SSP or was he mid-season? I can't remember. But
it might have been SSP.
He had a great run of form before that knee. So the fact that he's back and playing good footy is great for Richmond, because at his best he was just a big unit, coming out of full forward, centre half forward, and showed plenty for someone who's pretty late to football.
Yeah, and just looking in that Tiger team for who you did mention earlier, who could potentially play on the bond. I'm not saying a Marcus Windhager type. You mentioned Camden McIntosh. Maybe he can run around with him a little bit.
Straight
Richmond
head-to-head with Dion Prestia. Just let him go. Let him go at it. Meatball.
That could work. I mean, I think he's got a -3 break-even Prestia. He's got an average of about 130 from his 2 games, and some people are bringing him in. I would caution against it because
it scares me that people are talking about bringing him in.
Yeah, his hamstring, his quads, everything is just.
No one has enough trades for that.
No. But good luck, I guess, if you're prepared to take the gamble. But not for me, that one. But Matt, it is time for our best bets of the week, powered by Better. Now, last week we focused on the Bulldogs. They're playing the Saints, and we liked Bailey Dale. And I think you actually nailed both legs of yours, didn't you? You got Bailey Dale.
I got mine.
Wanganeen Miller both got the 30 touches.
Should have gone 40 plus.
Yeah.
Silly.
And I came agonisingly close as well. Went with his Stats Wars, Wilkie versus Bailey Dale. I had Dale for the most kicks, which he did, and for the most handballs. And then I had Wilkie for the most tackles, which he did. And I also had Wilkie for the most tackles, but they actually ended up having, for the most marks, and they had 10 each. And given that a draw was an option, I guess I'll lose that. So
no.
But damn close.
Cheeky.
But you got yours, so we'll take that win.
Take a win.
I'm looking at the Dogs potentially again this week, but who do you like?
I'm going a little bit of tonight's game and a little bit of tomorrow, so it's going a bit of a multi. Just too much value out there. So I'm going Luke Jackson against Vigo Vizentini. I've got him to have 20 touches. So he's, especially the fact that he's playing without Sean Darcy, I think that 20 is an absolute minimum. I looked at 25, but the price wasn't there for me. His max in his career is 27, so I didn't really want to tempt it too much, but 20 I'm pretty happy with. In a wet and wild WA, I'm going Andy Brayshaw 30. I think he'll just rack it up as well. And then tomorrow night it's the big 350th game for Paddy Dangerfield. So I'm going to give him 2 goals because he is possibly the hungriest man in football when he's within 60 metres of the goal, and I can just see him making it all about himself and trying to kick him from everywhere. So that's paying $5. So I'll take that.
Ooh. Yeah, I like that. I'm looking at that Bulldogs Richmond game on the Sunday. I think pretty straightforward to say I've got Bond, Ed Richards, and Bailey Dale to all get 25 plus. So you get about $3 for that. So it's not amazing odds because I think the Bulldogs are a very high possession team. Richmond give up a lot of possessions, and this is just the sort of game that you can see the Bulldogs racking up the score on. And then I looked at Sam Darcy, obviously the flavour of the week. You don't get much for him getting some goals in this game. They're on top of that one. But I do like actually Buku Karmas. So if you throw him in the mix to kick a goal, you get $4, or to get 2 goals plus, it's $6. And his last 7 games, he's kicked 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, and 2. So, he might, with all the focus on Sam Darcy, he might sneak under the radar there and kick a couple. I didn't notice he's on the extended bench, but we'll just make sure he's actually named in the final team before you commit to that one. But, I reckon he could be good value this weekend. What is gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen, 1-800-858-858, or visit the website gamblinghelponline.org.au. Now, there's actually quite a lot of questions here, so we'll try and get through a few of these and do some captaincy talk.
Love that.
Before we wrap things up. I mean, it's an interesting week because I always thought coming into the buys, just I'll make a couple of trades and then try and stick fat and not trade. But every week there's always something I need to do. But I think actually trying to preserve trades could end up ahead if you can get away with it and come home with a wet sail when people like me all start to run out. Now, a question from CJ here is Hawks related. So I'll throw it your way, Matt. So they're obviously on the bye this week, but Sam Butler, a couple of, pretty impressive performances as a rookie for the Hawks the last 2 weeks. Do you think he's someone that you could potentially pick, next week when he's back and, on the bubble, or even, go early on him this week if you need a cheapie in the forward line?
Yeah, I'd expect him to hold his place at least for the next month or so. He's come in and he's impressed. He's been in really good form despite playing a sort of a half forward midfield role. It's been sort of a tough one to break into, but he's gone ahead of the guys like Finn McGuinness. I think he's ahead of Henry Huswaite and Cam McKenzie, which is a little bit more surprising. But he brings a tackling pressure, which the Hawks really lacked during that 3-week span where they lost to Gold Coast, Brisbane, and Collingwood. And the Gold Coast game was close, but tackling wasn't great. And then in the next 2 games, it was deplorable. So he was brought in to help fix that problem, and he's done that. And I think he'll be rewarded for it. So that's one that I'm looking at trading in early, just so I don't have to do it next week. If I decide not to go with any trades, but definitely one to watch next week. I think is probably one of the safer options if you don't have Tom McCarthy, who's going to average 130 for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I did look up this week. Who are the top ranked defenders, the top ranked mids in SuperCoach, and he's number 1 in both categories after awesome. One game. A couple of questions here on Kane McCall for Richmond. What's wrong with him? So I did just have a quick look, and they're saying he injured his quad at training. So no time frame on that, but that doesn't sound great. And Richmond have already had their bye, so yeah, that's tough because he's been pretty decent the last few weeks. But yeah, it might be one that you look to potentially move on, especially we'll be obviously talking about this in a week's time. But round 16 bye is pretty brutal. There are going to be a lot of players missing, so you need all these guys on deck if you can get them. So that's a tough one for McAuliffe. Now, someone pointing out that no Briggs again, so that's true. So Nick Madden is on the bubble. Will play his 3rd game for the Giants, but on the injury list this week, Briggs was down as 1 week away with an ankle. Giants have the bye next week, and then you'd think he comes back in the week after. So it would be a big gamble to pick Nick Madden. I mean, there's a world in which they just give Nick Madden a run because he's going all right, and Briggs wasn't exactly setting the world on fire in the first half of the year, but I mean, he has been their number 1 ruckman, so that'd be a pretty big gamble, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Giants out of any team really have the history and the precedent of dropping their season number 1 rucks for these the next gen, I guess. So we obviously saw it with Matt Flynn when he came in, and then Kieran Briggs took over from him, and now Nick Madden's doing the same. I guess I know there's an injury there, but Madden's been pretty impressive, and as you said, Briggs has been pretty patchy in the first half of the year. He's had some absolute shockers, and he's had some pretty good games. So they from my understanding from what our guy on the ground in Lucky McCurdy says is they like Madden, but in saying that he's a 20-year-old ruck, so he's going to have some bad games, he's going to have some decent games, and they might like his the more seasoned veteran build of Kieran Briggs. Not that he's old, but he's just been around a little bit longer, and he can throw his weight around a bit more. So I'm not doing it. I know the desperation of round 15 when you find a rookie who's scoring pretty well, but probably scares me a little bit too much. We saw what Harry Boyd did to us.
Yes, that's exactly right. Brett McKenzie. I don't think this is the Brett McKenzie from Florida Concords, but you never know. This is a big question for the week, and potentially the next week or two. It depends how many spots people have in the forward line, but sort of similarly priced, both coming down a little bit, but maybe not as much as we potentially hope. But Sam Darcy or Jason Horne-Francis, if you could only pick one, who do you like?
I would go Horne-Francis. I'd go Horne-Francis, but I have Horne-Francis, so maybe I'm a bit biased. I'm not a huge key forward picker, and I know that Sam Darcy is not a key forward. He is a unicorn and a freak, and as Jesse Hogan said on AFL 360 on Tuesday night, he's the most complete footballer the game has ever seen. So he can do it all. So I can see why people are drawn to him. But Richmond have a tendency of holding players and good key forwards to 0 or 1 goals. They kept Hogan goalless for the first time in forever. I don't think he'll score the 200 points that everyone's expecting. But he looked very good last week when he was coming off a knee injury.
Yeah, I think they're both great picks. If you can afford, if you can get to Darcy this week, then I would just say get him. Horne-Francis maybe sort of a little bit cheaper next week. I'm potentially going to end up with both of them, so I'm pretty happy with that. But I think they'll both be really good picks. Yeah, that's an interesting point you make. We had Drew Jones talked about Ben Miller, and his record this year has actually been really good. So yeah, it might not be quite as obvious this week that Darcy, you have to get him in this week, and he still has a sort of 150 break even, so his price is still coming down. What do you think of this strategy of trading Max Gawn, which a few people are looking at? Maybe not, pardon me, not to TDK, but given the Pitnet situation. But Elliot has traded him for Brayshaw and sticking Brayshaw in flex. So, not much wrong with that. Gives you about 100 grand, which you could then use to potentially upgrade, finish off your team somewhere else. But is that a sort of a strategy that you think could work out? Or, just it'd be pretty scary watching Max Gawn after doing something like this. But then if you pick up a Brayshaw and 2 other primos, maybe you're not too worried.
Yeah, it does give you a little bit more flexibility with the money, and obviously Gawn is very expensive at the moment. He's actually not that far off his starting price of I think it was $660 or $670 thereabouts. But he does have a relatively tough run coming up. He's got Jared Witts this week. He's got Riley O'Brien the next, Tristan Cherry, Tom De Koning, and then Rowan Marshall over his next 5. So, bit of a battle over the next month and a bit. I can see why people are jumping off him, especially considering he's got the bye this weekend as well. So, makes it an interesting trade. If you've got the trades and you've got the luxury of having 8 to 12 plus trades still left in the bank, then I can see why people are really contemplating it. Brayshaw has been an absolutely fine form. He's got sort of an Essendon midfield that league points and is playing in the wet, so I can expect him to go pretty big this week. If you've got the trades and the flexibility, I'd be definitely looking at it as an option. And the fact that you've got 2 rucks gives you a bit more cover as well. You don't have to rely on a Matt Flynn or a Nick Madden holding out one of the spots. If you've only got 4 or 5 trades, though, can't be doing it.
No, I agree with that. I think, if you've got some trades, maybe you can play around, but I wouldn't be trading at Max Gawn if you're starting to get a little bit low on trades. Now, you mentioned Brayshaw, and it does lead into captaincy talk. We've got a question from Adam here. Dale or Bont, which I think would be, I guess you could be potentially trading them in, but also looking at them as captains this weekend. I think both are great options. against the Tigers on Sunday. And then, tonight, Luke Jackson, we've already mentioned. Amazing VC option. If you do have him, I've got Brayshaw, so I'll probably whack the VC on him. But who else do we potentially like over the weekend? I mean, the Max Holmes, Bailey Smith combo is always pretty good, but who else grabs your attention?
Yeah, I'm leaning Luke Jackson tonight. I can see Brayshaw or Sarong also being very good options there for Fremantle. I don't really like anyone from Essendon. I think Tristan Cherry scores very well against De Koning. However, the addition of Pitnet sort of counteracts that a little bit. He's a sort of a bigger body and throws his weight around a little bit. So I think that'll be quite a good fight. Sort of being double teamed there for Cherry. So it sort of leaned me away from picking him as my captain. Bailey Smith and Max Holmes, as you mentioned, against Brisbane, unlikely to cop a tag. Jordan Clark's another one I forgot to mention tonight. That's a good option there. I'd be leaning away from Jack Sinclair. His form has been terrible against Collingwood.
It really has. I saw that.
Just shocking history. So bizarre there. Yeah. But yeah, I think I prefer out of those two, Bailey Dale over the Bont. Just in terms of the Bulldogs' record of against conceding points against rebounding half-backs, and he is an absolute seagull. And I hate not owning him, but he's only 550. I don't understand how I haven't bought him at this point. But just collects the ball at will, and Bont I think is sort of a high damage player, and the fact that Ed Richards is performing so well at the moment sort of counteracts the need to sort of rely so heavily on Bont, which is great for the Dogs, but not great for our SuperCoach.
Yeah, I guess that's an interesting point. I mean, Bont's average against Richmond over his entire career, he averages 128 points against them, which is the most clearly against any team, which is pretty crazy when you think that includes sort of the first few years of his career. But I mean, it's hard to know because the last couple of weeks, since a lot of us brought him in, he's been a bit underwhelming. He obviously was scoring really well his first few games back, so he's still got it in him. But maybe, as you say, the Dogs just have so many weapons there. Some weeks it's on him, and another week it's Ed Richards or it's Bailey Dale having 40-something possessions. So he's probably, I'm still looking at him as a fullback captain, but if I had Bailey Dale, I probably would put him ahead of the Bont just about, because, as you say, Richmond gives up so many points to those running halfbacks. Like we saw, Nick Martin a few weeks ago got about 170 points. They just give them no attention whatsoever. So when Bailey Dale gets that kind of freedom, we know what he can do, as we saw against the Bombers just a couple of weeks ago. But a few interesting options there. No Max Gawn, obviously, so it does give us a bit more to think about. But I think especially with the option, everybody can loop with a player, a blue dot buy player. So get 2 cracks at it, and you should get a decent score out of that. I mean, how are you looking for numbers this week in terms of buy players? I think next week's going to be the real brutal one, but this week's there's a few popular players out as well.
Yeah, I've only got 4 buy players this weekend. So I've got Tom McCarthy and Tom Gross, who McCarthy I brought in last week, and then Oliver and Petrarca is my only 4. So the rest of my team is full. A lot of green dots and a couple of Saints boys sort of round out the guys that are, I can't get on the field, unfortunately. But plenty of green. 1 orange of Caleb Smith in my flex currently. But that might become Toby Travalia if he's not named at 5 p.m. tomorrow. So I think we'll be fine. We've got more than enough to get us through the best 18.
Just looking at my team quickly. We won't spend too long getting bogged down in this, but I've got Zach Johnson stuck on the bench. I can't get him on. I guess I can emergency him, and if he scores well, maybe.
Gotta play him. He's going to score 100 this week.
Because then what if he scores 90? Who do you take off? Take off for Will Ashcroft or something, or Dacos? Yeah. That's really. Or do I?
You could honestly. I don't know. I'm not looking at your team, but I'd be leaning Dacos in the face of a tag. I know that he scores well anyway, but I guarantee 90 or it's an interesting one. I love Zach Johnson though, so he's one of my favorite players. Let's get him on the podcast. What's he doing next Thursday?
All right, well, we better wrap it up there, but that's something I can work on during the week. But thanks, Matt, for joining us again. Thanks, everybody else, for watching. Sorry for some of those little technical glitches. It seems like it was only me who copped those early on, so everybody else should have had a great experience watching. Good luck with your trades this week, and we'll catch you again soon.